The Ed Morrissey Show begins now. On AM 1280, The Patriot.
Welcome back to the Ed Morrissey Show. I'm Ed Morrissey, broadcasting to you live from AM 1280, The Patriot Studios here in Minneapolis. And on the line with me right now, Senator James Inhofe, Republican from Oklahoma, and the ranking member of the Environment and Public Works Committee in the Senate. Welcome to the show, sir.
Well, nice to be back with you, Ed.
It's great speaking with you. And, of course, breaking news today out of EPW is the report that your caucus is releasing on rules and regulations that are being applied by the EPA on greenhouse gases and other issues that are going to cost upwards of 800,000 jobs in the United States. And this is a scary report, sir.
Oh, it is. Now, Ed, it's really much, much more than that. That's just those 800,000 jobs are really more in what they call the Boiler MAC, the new restrictions they have on boilers, and so it's much greater than that. And by the way, I want to add that you're the first one I've talked to about this. It's not even printed yet, but I'm looking at it, and I'm glad that somebody finally cares that all this silly stuff that they're doing over at the EPA costs money. And it disadvantages the poor more than anybody else. And ironically, while we're giving this interview right now, I have the Catholic Charities in my office. And, of course, we've had them come in and testify as to how all these things, cap and trade and this type of thing, it hurts the poor people more than anybody else.
Catholic Charities is a fine organization, fine charitable organization. I fully support Catholic Charities, and they do great work, as you well know. But this is it is a very scary situation, and part of this, especially the first part of the report is about the Boiler Act. But what I found most ironic, I guess I could say, in this report is what happens with the cement industry, because in effect, what is going to happen is the EPA is going to make cement more costly, more of an import item, and really a lot less environmentally friendly. Tell us a little bit about the cement industry and what the impact is with that.
Well, right now, they're up to 18 cement plants are at risk of shutting down, and that would be about 9,000 jobs. Now, that wasn't included in the jobs we talked about in the beginning.
Exactly.
Now, what would happen on this, Ed? It's the same thing. I could draw a relationship between this and what they tried to do with the endangerment finding. This is heavy lifting. We're in the weeds now, but it's huge stuff. The requirements that they are making right now in terms of the cement industry would mean that we would be shipping off this industry to China, most likely, because that's where the demand is the greatest. Right now, their quality is no good over there, and that's where the jobs would probably go. And it's so close to the endangerment finding, and we've talked about this before. It was the whole idea that man-made gases are causing catastrophic global warming is something that, it was 8 years ago I made the statement that is probably the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on the American people, because in fact it's just something that is not true. So they tried to pass cap and trade. We remember back in 2003, 2005 when they had the McCain-Lieberman bill.
Yep.
And then we talked actually a long time ago about this. Then of course you had the other bills that have come up since that time: Waxman, Markey, Boxer, Sanders, and all of that. The one thing they all have in common, along with way back the Kyoto Treaty, is that it would cost people somewhere in the range is always between $300 and $400 billion a year. Now, that doesn't come from me, not from Senator Jim Inhofe. And people say, well, since I'm ranked as the most conservative senator by quite a few, they try to say that I'm not qualified to make statements like this. That doesn't come from me. That comes from MIT. It comes from the Wharton School. It comes from CRA and other groups. And coincidentally, they say the cost is going to be the same. Now, getting to your subject and the subject of this report, Barack Obama and Carol Browner and the very liberals that are running this country right now were not able to get through the Senate any kind of a cap and trade bill. So they're going to try to do it with regulation. To do that, they have to have an endangerment finding. And right before Copenhagen, we had Lisa Jackson, the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, in a hearing. And I asked her, I said, I'm going to go, I'll be a one-man truth squad going to Copenhagen to undo the damage that's being done by John Kerry and Barbara Boxer and so forth. But while I'm gone, I have a feeling you're going to do an endangerment finding. And she kind of smiled. And I said, if you do, what is the science that you're going to use for that endangerment finding? And she said the IPCC, which we all know is the United Nations.
Right.
Now, coincidentally, it was during that trip that ClimateGate came out, and it was just people realize now that the whole thing is false and that they've cooked the science, something we've known for many years. So now we have, if you just single out in the report that we came out with today, what the cost is going to be with this endangerment finding, it is greater than all the rest of them, but you can't really quantify it because you don't know, we know approximately that we're going to have to, our jobs will have to go someplace where they're generating electricity, and since they're going to impact that, we don't know just what it's going to be. It's going to be huge, though.
I'm reading through this report, and I have to ask you, this is my question to you. What right-wing super conservative outfit said this to you? Tens of thousands of these jobs will be imperiled by the Boiler Act. In addition, many more tens of thousands of jobs in the supply chains and the communities where these plants are located also will be at risk. What right-wing organization supplied you with that quote, sir?
Okay, well, it's really not a right-wing organization.
No, it's not.
That came from the Environmental Protection Agency. What we do on this report is we go to industry, we go to business industry, we look at all the figures, Department of Labor,
yep.
And then we go to the Environmental Protection Agency, and we look at the regulations and how they impact people, and we come out with a very well-documented report. This is the fourth report, by the way. It's not the first one. But this is the one that directly talks about the number of jobs that because of this administration, the very liberal administration, what they're trying to do with such things as the Boiler Mac and the endangerment finding, chasing our jobs overseas, because we can't continue to employ people if we can't generate electricity. Now, right now, we can't do any kind of a coal-fired generating plant, but they're doing 2 a week over in China. Mm-hmm. So now what happens? Here's another thing that there are skeptics out there, and I know that, who are listening to me thinking I'm some kind of a right-wing radical. But when Lisa Jackson, the administrator of the EPA, came in, and I asked her the question, what science, and she said it was that science. We had also talked to her about what is going to happen if we were to adopt all the cap and trade or the endangerment finding and all the regulations that come with that. And I said, if we do this in the United States, will this have the effect of reducing CO2 emissions? And I applaud her for her honesty. She said no. And the reason is that we'd be doing it just in the United States. That means, of course, our jobs would have to go to places like China and India and Mexico where they don't have restrictions. So I would contend that it would actually increase CO2 emissions by passing all these regulations.
Well, exactly. That's what happens with the cement industry here, is that you're going to actually increase emissions, and it's going to make cement more expensive, and the jobs are going to go overseas rather than stay here in the United States.
All three of the above is going to happen.
It's the trifecta.
That's the whole reason for this report. I'm going to do something on the floor today on this thing, and by that time we'll have a little more detail. And of course, when you get the whole report, we're looking at a summary. And the summary we're looking at, all the documentation is really in the report. I feel strongly about this, not just because I'm the ranking member on that committee, but because in my state of Oklahoma, I look at the number. We have one of those cement plants that will have to go under in my state of Oklahoma. We also know that if they come through with the new restrictions that they have on the ozone standards, that we'll have of 77 counties in Oklahoma, we have 2 right now under the old rules that might be out of attainment. We would have 15 counties in my state of Oklahoma. Now, what does that mean? It means they can't go out and recruit industry, provide jobs, and do all this because they would be violating what they are saying is excessive ozone emissions.
Right.
So it hits close to home to me, and people tend to think about, look at all these other ridiculous things that are going on, but the cost of overregulation Oddly enough, Ed, I never told you this, but that's the reason I ran for this office in the first place. I spent almost 25 years in the real world as a developer and a builder, and I was doing things I thought Americans are supposed to be doing, providing jobs, losing fortunes, and all that. But the chief obstacle I had all those years, Ed, was the federal government.
Yes.
The overregulation. I remember one condo development I did in South Texas. I had to go to 26 governmental agencies to get a dock permit. And so anyway, other countries don't do this. It puts us at a competitive disadvantage, and these regulations are chasing our jobs over to places where they're not.
Senator, we're out of time, but thank you for being with us. Senator James Inhofe, Republican from Oklahoma. We'll be right back. I'm Ed Morrissey from AM 1280, The Patriot.